You're watching News 24 Live. It's Tuesday, the 11th of August. We trust you had a great Women's Day. I'm joined in studio this morning by our Sport 24 panel editor, Gary Lamley, and chief writer, Rob Howing, to do a recap of the weekend's sports happenings. Gents, good morning. Thanks very much for coming in.
Morning, Nick.
Hope you're well rested.
Very well, thanks.
Okay, the Springboks I think we should start with because it's been dominating your headlines at least. Gary, I'll start with you. Is this a sort of rock bottom in South African rugby in the wake of obviously this third consecutive defeat and now more political stuff?
Absolutely. I think for both those reasons, it's pretty much rock bottom. Certainly, in the last couple of years, I can't think of a time that we've been more worried, especially heading into World Cup.
Yeah, the timing is appalling.
Yeah, which is now 6 weeks away. Throw in a couple of injuries as well to key players, and it's certainly not looking good for Hanneke Meyer's men. Looking back at Saturday's game, I don't think anyone really predicted we were going to lose. The bookies had us as 20-point favourites. They were obviously horribly wrong. But from the first minute or the second minute when Argentina scored their first try, it looked so simple, running through our back line. I was a bit worried that this was going to be the first time that we were going to ever lose to Argentina, and so it proved. Something just didn't look right. Part of me thought we had underestimated the Argentinian side, who had made, I think, 11 or 12 changes for this team. It was almost a completely new-looking Puma side. Our team was fairly settled, apart from Jean de Villiers coming back, but he wouldn't have come back if Hanneke Meyer hadn't thought he would have added something to the midfield. It did disrupt things a little bit. Jesse Kriel looked a bit out of his depth on the wing, but the rest of the team was fairly settled. But the way that the Argentina side helped a little bit, I guess, by the ref, especially at scrum time, that he sort of blew us out the game there. But I have serious concerns now about this, our World Cup chances. When you look at how the other teams are playing, how Australia seem to risen to the occasion, they're genuine World Cup contenders now. We saw Ireland really beating Wales comfortably in a match there. They look like, with England, I think the best of the Northern Hemisphere teams. I've got serious concerns now that South Africans won't go into their quarterfinal against either Australia or England as favourites, and that could be the point that we crash out. And even Scotland and Samoa and Fiji and Japan and the USA that we play in the group stages, they're not really going to be that put off by the performance, and they might fancy their chances of causing a little bit of an upset as well. So certainly not great times for South African rugby at all.
Rob, what did you take from this weekend's events?
It was certainly grim watching. There's no doubt that there was something there was a sort of a switch missing in that box side. It almost looked like from the outset, especially when I saw the Argentinians, so many of them in tears when the anthems came. I started to sort of think, oh, this is going to be one of those days where Argentina are going to be right up for it. And they're the sort of side who, if you do give them a sniff, and of course they got a sniff ludicrously early, as Garen said, because of that rather soft first try. I mean, the way Springbok players were slipping tackles was quite alarming.
Yeah.
There were some bad misses by guys like Marcel Coetzee, Eben Etzebeth, who are normally incredibly physically committed, enormously sort of tuned in to their defensive sort of needs. It was almost as if, as I say, there was just somebody forgot to flick the switch. Why? I don't quite know. I mean, some of these sort of experienced Boks who did stand up, guys like Schalk Burger, who he made some errors too, but Schalk always puts his body on the line, and he did say that he and Jean had tried everything as senior players to ignite things, and they said they didn't get a response. I thought it was quite illuminating to hear those words. We didn't get a response. It was almost sort of saying, come on guys, the young guys didn't really sort of pitch up for this contest, and that's obviously a concern. Is there something to do? Is there some sort of morale issue at stake? What is it really all about? So. It was concerning. I mean, let's face it, I think if the Springboks had won 37-25, there would have been some reservations, some people saying, we struggled to put the Argentinians away, and we lost 37-25, which tells you just how bad this particular game was. What it's done is also turn the Buenos Aires match into a massive one from a Springbok point of view. We're 3 test defeats down this year, as you said, and actually
the
4 in total.
Rested a lot of the top senior players, don't they? So they're going to now field an even stronger side this coming weekend.
Potentially they are. I think they will freshen in a few areas. I think, look, the amount of effort they put in, the passion that they put in, is going to take a little bit of a toll. So I imagine they will also do a little bit of tweaking to their side. There are certain players who you'll certainly see again, the guys who really sort of tormented South Africa on the day. But it's become a really massive game because Heineken Meyer is going to have to produce a strong side. He can't have the luxury now of fielding an experimental team on the back of the expected home win. That's gone out of the window. What we know now is that the Springboks are under massive pressure to win and still to actually, frankly, to win reasonably well in Buenos Aires. And we've got to remember that we've had some sort of near horror shows on their soil in the last couple of years. We've been quite lucky to get away with a couple of results. You may remember Frans Stein's late charge down and intercept type try to spare some blushes a couple of years ago. We had that terrible scrummaging mauling, even worse than this Saturday's in Mendoza, I think, last time out there. So the signals don't sort of point very strongly to a Springbok win, which is an amazing thought when you'd think that a few weeks ago, you'd think, Springboks then at number 2 in the world, now we've dropped, to somewhere like 5, would normally have put them to bed quite easily. But it's looking like, at best, a sort of a 50-50 test match. And you can bet that Argentinian fans will be pitching up in numbers to almost celebrate what happened in Durban. So in many ways, it's a good test for the Springboks. It's going to be a real wake-up call game, and a good way to actually prepare them for the World Cup. And if they do get a good win, touch wood, they manage to turn things around, then at least there'll be just a hint that things are sort of stabilising again a little bit. But sadly, we have fallen quite far behind in the last few weeks, sort of progressively so.
And Rob, just quickly from you, how important do you think it is that South Africa has Jean de Villiers back in the side? It seems to almost have disrupted the harmony, that sort of momentum that was slowly building, even though South Africa lost those 2 games, against the All Blacks and Australia. They were close, and it's kind of, the dynamics sort of seems to have been disrupted.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because Heineken Meyer, from the outset of his reign in 2012, installed Jean de Villiers as his captain. He decided Jean de Villiers was going to be his captain all the way through to the World Cup, and it was certainly something that I supported hugely at the time. I still have a massive admiration for Jean de Villiers. He's been taking a lot of stick over the last couple of days, but if anything, he was actually one of the gutsier characters. I mean, he played out that match with a broken jaw without squealing about it in the slightest. This is a guy who was, had other issues to think about, like getting through 80 minutes with that knee, which he actually did. And I've got to say, I didn't think a lot of the problems came through Jean's channel. It was more what was going on inside. It was the Springbok defensive organisation in sort of closer positions, and definitely some instability in the halfback positions, where Ruan Pienaar and Handré Pollard, unfortunately, as a combination, were pretty awful on the day. So not too many sort of issues outside, but where you're correct is that obviously that Allende-Kriel midfield alliance had been one of the more settled aspects and more pleasing aspects of the Springbok defeats against the Wallabies and New Zealand, games we might well have won, and where the youngsters really actually took it to sort of very experienced opposite numbers in those Wallaby and All Black sides. So it was going to cause some ructions, Jean coming into that midfield berth. But as I say, I thought he came through it reasonably well, considering that he'd been out for so long. From a knee point of view, I think he'd be feeling psychologically good. Now the poor guy's got a sore jaw and is drinking soup for the next couple of weeks. The one blessing, of course, is that he now goes into a sort of a conditioning sort of mode again, and they say he can take part in quite a lot of the conditioning. It'll almost give his leg a chance to get even stronger by not having any sort of massive contact for the next few weeks. So I suppose you've got to bank that as a positive. But there's instability across several positions. It's not just the Jean de Villiers issue, because we're also waiting on, is Fourie de Preer going to be suitably fit and sharp to play at the World Cup? Is Duane Vermeulen going to be back? There are so many question marks at the moment rather than answers. So that's an ominous development going into the tournament.